How smart couples handle money so it doesn't blow up their relationship. You ever sit across from your partner at the kitchen table, laptop open, bank app on your phone, both of you staring at the same checking account and thinking, how are we already this close to zero? Nobody's yelling yet, but you can feel the tension in the room. One of you is wondering, why are we eating out so much? And the other one is thinking, why do you act like every dollar I spend is a problem? That quiet tension right there is where a lot of relationships slowly crack. Not because one person is evil or irresponsible, but because you're trying to share a life with two completely different money histories, habits, and fears smashed into one bank balance. So let's talk about it head on. How should couples in the US actually manage money together so it doesn't turn into resentment, secrets, or a breakup over a credit card bill? By the time we're done here, you'll have a simple way to talk about money with your partner without it turning into a fight, a practical structure for how to set up your accounts, and a few rules that make things feel fair even if you don't earn the same amount. I'm not here to judge you or your partner. I'm here to help you turn money from a constant argument into just another system the two of you run together. Hey, I'm Dylan from Dylan Investments. Money talks, I translate it for you. And in relationships, money is talking all the time, even when nobody's saying a word out loud. Let's start with something important. Money fights are almost never about the literal dollars. They're about what those dollars represent. Maybe you grew up in a house where money was always tight. The electric bill was a stress event, and your parents argued every time something unexpected broke. For you, seeing the account balance dip too low feels like walking back into that house. Maybe your partner grew up the opposite way. Money was there. They went on vacations, and nobody talked budgets. For them, stressing over every purchase feels like punishment. Now put those two people in one apartment with one rent payment and one shared grocery bill. You can see where this goes. I know a guy named Jason who went through this. Jason grew up with a single mom who worked 2 jobs, never had an emergency fund, and kept cash hidden in random envelopes because she didn't trust the bank. He learned that every dollar has a job and you never splurge until the basics are handled. Fast forward. Jason moves in with his girlfriend, who we'll call Kelly. Kelly came from a middle-class family where they bought new phones when they wanted them, did Target runs for fun, and never really talked about money stress. Jason thought he was being responsible. Kelly thought he was being controlling. They weren't actually fighting about Netflix or DoorDash. They were fighting about two very different definitions of normal. Here's where this gets interesting. You don't need to agree on every money habit to make it work. You just need a shared system that both of you understand and respect. When couples blow up over money, it's usually because there is no system. There's just vibes, guesses, and unspoken expectations. One person assumes everything is 50-50ths. The other assumes whoever makes more pays more. One person thinks a $200 impulse buy is no big deal. The other sees it as a direct threat to rent. Nobody's on the same page because there is no page. There are a few patterns I see over and over with couples. One is silence. Nobody talks about money until something goes wrong, like an overdraft, a declined card on date night, or a surprise bill. Another is secrecy. Hidden credit cards, secret Amazon accounts, buy now pay later balances that never got mentioned. And then there's scorekeeping. I paid for this, so you should pay for that. I did rent, you do the vacation. Once a relationship turns into a spreadsheet of who owes who, it stops feeling like a team and starts feeling like roommates keeping receipts. So what do you actually do differently? If I were sitting at your kitchen table with you and your partner, here's where I'd start. Before we talk about accounts or spreadsheets or apps, you need one honest conversation about money stories. Not a fight, a conversation. You ask each other questions like, when you were growing up, how did your family handle money? What's one money moment as a kid that really stuck with you? What's the financial situation that makes you most anxious right now? You're not doing this to psychoanalyze each other. You're doing it so you stop assuming your partner is crazy or cheap or reckless and start seeing where their habits came from. Once you've done that, then the structure part gets a lot easier. Let's talk accounts, because this is where people get heated. Some couples put every dollar into one shared account and pay everything from there. Some keep everything separate and Venmo each other for bills. Some do a blend, yours, mine, and ours. There's no one perfect formula for every couple, but there is one that works really well for a lot of people, especially in the US where incomes can be uneven, debt loads can be very different, and life is expensive. Imagine you and your partner each keep your own individual checking account. That's yours and mine. On top of that, you create a joint account that exists only for shared life expenses and shared goals. That's ours. Your individual accounts are where your paycheck lands first. From there, you each automatically transfer money into the joint account based on an agreed-upon plan, not vibes. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, internet, basic household stuff, shared insurance, and big shared goals like a vacation or a house down payment come out of that joint account. The fun, personal, individual stuff comes out of your own accounts. Now, the big question, how much does each person put into that joint account? This is where couples get stuck on fair. A lot of people default to 50-50 because it feels simple. But if one of you makes $80,000 a year and the other makes $40,000, splitting everything down the middle might technically be equal, but it doesn't feel fair. The lower earner is going to feel squeezed all the time. The higher earner might start feeling like a parent instead of a partner. If you only remember one idea from this video, make it this one. In relationships, fair doesn't always mean equal. Fair can mean proportional. So instead of, we each pay half the bills, you think in percentages. Maybe you decide each of you contributes the same percentage of your income into the joint account. If the plan is that 60% of your combined income covers shared expenses and shared goals, then each of you funnels 60% of your paycheck into that joint account automatically. That way, both of you feel the contribution, but neither of you is drowning. The person making more contributes more dollars, but the same percentage. The person making less isn't living on crumbs after paying their half. Let's make it more concrete. Picture Mike and his partner. Mike makes around $90,000 as an engineer. His partner works in education and makes about $50,000. If they do 50/50ths on a $2,400 rent, that's $1,200 each. On top of that, throw in utilities, internet, groceries, car insurance, and they're both dropping maybe $2,000 a month into shared costs. For Mike, that stings, but it's manageable. For his partner, that's a massive bite out of take-home pay. Over time, one of two things happens. Either the lower earner starts living on credit cards and quietly building debt just to keep up, or they start resenting every non-essential expense. Dinners out, weekend trips, gifts. Not because they don't want those things, but because they can't afford them under that structure. Now rewind and run the same couple with a percentage into joint setup. Let's say they agree that 60% of each person's net income goes into the joint account. Mike's 60% is bigger. His partner's 60% is smaller. Shared life is still funded. But both of them are left with personal money in their own accounts that they can spend or save without asking permission and without guilt. Suddenly, the conversation stops being, "Why did you buy that?" and becomes, "Cool, that came out of your money, not out of rent." It sounds small, but this one change lowers the emotional temperature in a huge way. Here's the twist. It's not just about the account structure. It's about the rules you agree on around those accounts. One rule that saves a lot of stress is a no-surprise bomb rule. Basically, you and your partner pick a dollar amount, and you agree that any purchase over that amount that touches shared money needs to be talked about beforehand. That number will be different depending on your income. For some couples, it might be $100. For others, maybe it's $500. The point isn't the exact number. The point is you don't wake up and find out that your partner drained half the joint account for concert tickets or a new TV you didn't know about. Another rule that really helps is giving each person non-negotiable, no judgment money every month. A set amount that goes into your personal account or is marked off as yours in the budget, and you can blow it on hobbies, sneakers, gaming, takeout, whatever, without having to justify it. If you keep slamming each other for every coffee or every online order, the relationship starts feeling like a constant audit. When you each have your own clearly defined fund money, you get to keep your personality and preferences without putting the whole household at risk. Let's talk about debt, because this one can quietly wreck a relationship if you never put it on the table. In the US, it's very common for one partner to be carrying big student loans or high-interest credit cards from before you got together, or even medical debt. What I see a lot is people being more honest about their favorite Netflix shows than their actual balances. At some point, you need a no-secret debts agreement. That doesn't mean you have to merge everything immediately, It does mean both of you should know what's out there, how much is owed, what the interest rates are, and what the plan is. Here's where things quietly go wrong. One partner is hyper-focused on paying off their credit cards, throwing every spare dollar at 25% interest. The other partner, who doesn't know how bad that debt is, keeps suggesting weekend trips and big purchases because, in their mind, we're doing fine. They aren't malicious. They're just flying blind. On the flip side, the partner with debt feels embarrassed, so they avoid the topic entirely, and that shame turns into withdrawal or snappiness. You don't fix this with a lecture. You fix it with a shared game plan. Maybe you agree that for the next year, a chunk of the joint account goes toward killing the highest interest debt because that benefits both of you long term. Maybe you agree that any new debt decisions are joint decisions, not solo missions. Remember that quiet tension at the kitchen table we talked about earlier? This is exactly how you start defusing it. You replace the unspoken chaos with a schedule and a script. One of the most powerful habits a couple can build is a monthly money check-in. Nothing dramatic. Not a 3-hour interrogation. Just a recurring time where you sit down together, look at the numbers, and talk like teammates instead of rivals. You look at what came in, what went out, what's coming up next month, and how you're doing toward your shared goals. You also leave a little space in that conversation for feelings. Not just, we spent too much on food, but I'm feeling anxious about how close we're cutting it, or I'm feeling guilty that I'm not earning more right now. To make this less abstract, imagine you and your partner pick the first Sunday of every month as money coffee. You sit down with your coffee, open the banking apps, and you run through a simple flow. Here's what we earned. Here are the big bills that hit. Here's where we went over what we expected. Here's where we stayed under. Here's what's coming next month. Travel, car repairs, birthdays, holidays. Then you take 5 minutes and talk about what felt tense around money this month. Was there a purchase that stung? A moment where one of you felt judged? A surprise bill that freaked you out? Then you adjust the plan. Not with blame, but with, okay, knowing that. How do we tweak next month so it doesn't feel like that again? Now, underneath all of this, there's a bigger question. What kind of life are you two actually trying to build together? It's really hard to agree on month-to-month money stuff if you've never talked about the bigger targets. Do you want kids? Do you want to stay in your city? Or move somewhere cheaper or more expensive? Do you want to own a home? Or are you genuinely okay renting long-term? Do you want one of you to stay home at some point? Or both of you to keep working full-time? Your money system should match the life you actually want, not the one Instagram tells you to want. I've seen couples who never talk about big goals and end up in this weird half-compromise where nobody's happy. One person secretly wants to buy a house in 5 years. The other secretly wants to travel the world and stay flexible. So their money goes to a little bit of everything, and, realistically, they're not getting either. But when you actually put the big goals on the table, you can start making real trade-offs together. Maybe you decide, okay, for the next 3 years, we're going to live below our means, stack an emergency fund, and push toward a down payment. That means fewer expensive trips, but we'll plan one modest vacation a year so we don't feel miserable. Or maybe you decide, we're not in a season for buying. We're in a season for flexibility. So we'll rent and instead put extra into retirement and experiences. The point is, you're choosing together instead of drifting. There's also a legal and system side to this in the US that couples often ignore. I'm not your attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice, but I will tell you this. Once you're married, the law in many states starts treating your money and your debts like a team sport whether your accounts are joint or not. Your partner's financial choices can affect your life and vice versa. That's another reason secrets are so dangerous. Even if you've decided to keep certain accounts separate, you're still living in one shared reality when it comes to housing, kids, retirement, and risk. Operating like two totally separate financial islands doesn't match how life actually works when you're building a future together. If you're not married yet, or you're just starting to get serious with someone, this is actually a huge opportunity instead of a risk. You get to watch how they handle money before everything is fully tied together. Do they pay their bills on time? Do they constantly overdraft and laugh it off? Are they working a plan on their debt, or just ignoring it until the collectors call? None of this means you should break up with someone the moment you see a red flag. But it does mean you need to take their money behavior seriously. You're not just dating their personality. You're dating their habits, their obligations, and their financial future too. Here's where it gets real. If you're watching this because money is already a sore spot in your relationship, you might be wondering, okay, but how do I even bring this up without starting a fight? One approach that works way better than, we need to talk about your spending, is to frame it as, I want us to have less stress and more control. You can say something like, hey, I've been feeling anxious about money lately, and I don't want it to turn into resentment between us. Can we sit down this weekend and look at everything together and try to make a plan that feels fair for both of us? You're inviting them into a team conversation, not putting them on trial. Then, when you sit down, focus more on the system than on their character. Instead of, you always waste money on food delivery, try, it looks like we're spending more on food delivery than we realized. Do we want to keep that the same and cut somewhere else? Or do we want to cap that and move the extra toward our goals? You're still talking about the numbers, but you're not attacking them as a person. Over time, these softer, system-focused conversations build trust, and money starts to feel like something you two manage together, not a weapon you use on each other. If this is making a few light bulbs go off, I'd actually recommend you send this video to your partner and watch it together. Pause it, talk about the parts that hit home, the parts you disagree with, the parts that feel scary or exciting. Use it as a neutral third voice at the table so it's not just you versus them. And when you're ready to go deeper, the next big topic that really matters for couples is understanding your credit scores, your debt, and how to build an emergency cushion so one unexpected event doesn't knock both of you over. That's something I break down in other videos, because once you've got your system as a couple, the next move is to protect that system. At the end of the day, money is going to show up in your relationship whether you want it to or not. The question isn't, can we avoid money stress forever? The question is, are we going to let money run the relationship, or are we going to learn to run it together? When you understand each other's money stories, when you set up a structure that feels fair instead of just equal, when you make space for honest conversations and shared goals, money stops being this constant, low-grade anxiety in the background. It becomes just another tool the two of you use to build a life you're both proud of. I'm Dylan from Dylan Investments. Money Talks, and I'll keep translating it for you. Have a good one, my friend.